Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of Ted Zurkowski, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff. Has had a lifetime both in music and theatre. Founded the Frog and Peach Theatre Company in New York. Very, famous for putting on the plays of Shakespeare, but then went on to do various musical combos, including working with the British rock and roll legend Ian MacDonald, he of King Crimson and Foreigner fame, to form the band Honey West, and they released their debut album Bad Old World a few years ago. So anyway, I will, you'll find out more about Ted and much more in this fascinating interview. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject of the early formative years. Ted, it's over to you.
Completely British. When I was, I made it through high school, then college, of course, with an English and drama major, which helped me out a lot when I auditioned for the Actors Studio when I got to New York. But the thing is, my record collection when I was that age, right, in the 70s, was entirely British.
Right.
Not the Hoople, the Kinks, the Stones, the Beatles, David Bowie, just about everybody you named. And I think I had one Bob Dylan album. That was it.
Right. There you go. What year were you born, by the way, or roughly born?
About the same time you were.
Right. Okay. So we are really, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got it. Well, it kind of places people a little bit, don't they? They're either missed it because they were born in 1980 or they were born in 1957. And so they've got a bit more of the 60s consciousness. So that's always a bit of a different.
That's for sure. And I started as a drummer, in high school. I was a very good drummer and I was making money with cover bands. And then I got to college, got to New York, got to the Actors Studio, and then put all that aside. And then about 6 years into all of that, I got a band together again. And it was called Right Little Boy. It was a very downtown, almost a proto-punk band in a way, but very melodic. And, we flogged that around. We made a demo, which was on cassette back then. We used to go around handing out cassettes to record companies.
Yes.
And, we had a big nibble from Chrysalis, which was a big label back then. And the A&R guy said, okay, I'm going to sit down with you boys. As soon as I get back from Florida, I got to see why the Romantics are over budget. So he gets down to Florida, the poor son of a bitch. And they have a note at the front desk of the hotel. It says, you're fired. He's got to go back to New York. So that was the end of our A&R guy.
Well, yes, that was yes. His career was relatively short. So did you grow up in New York during the 70s? Was that your
I grew up in Connecticut, Stamford, Connecticut, which is only about 30 miles across the border. And it was a very interesting town, but I knew I had to get out. My high school was very progressive. It was just great. And everybody went, you want diversity? We had diversity. Just everybody was there in the town. It was not an elite school just because it's in Connecticut, But I've always made sure I got a good education in between, fucking around.
And did your parents give you much kind of encouragement or help, or did they create an environment?
No, not at all. No. I mean, my father bought me a set of drums, which was wonderful. And then I started turning them onto some records that I didn't want to buy because I was spending my lawn mowing money on other records. So I got them to buy Bridge Over Troubled Water. Mm-hmm. I got them to buy, I like Glenn Campbell. Nashville Skyline was in my parents' shelf, So I was turning them onto stuff that they could dig, anything that was like very crossover, like Paul Simon, like the other two acts I mentioned.
What about people like your Neil Youngs and James Taylor and Joni Mitchell? Because that kind of, if you're into Paul Simon or Simon and Garfunkel.
No, we were into girls, So it's like we're in high school. If you go over to a girls' party or a girls' house, you're going to get a good dose of all of those, except for Neil Young. I think I had one album of his, but I just always thought he was great. But I mean, I was so British. I don't know what happened to me. Maybe it was from watching the Beatles on TV when I was a kid. I don't know,
Yeah, so you loved all the young dudes, Ian Hunter, and that kind of vibe. But what about people like Rod Stewart and the Faces? Was that?
Oh my God, yes, that was my favorite band, over the Stones, for God's sakes. Oh my God, the Capitol Theater here in Port Chester, New York. We used to go across the border to, we were only like 16, but you could drink over there, And yeah, we had some good seats one night at the Capitol Theater in Port Chester, and the bands came on. Then finally, Rod and Ronnie and everybody comes on, and we just about died. I'd never seen that. I saw the Stones in '69
Oh, blimey.
when I was a very little kid. Maybe I am a few years older than you,
Where
but
where 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 was that you saw them?
Madison Square Garden. I didn't even know I was going until a friend of mine said, "Hey, these two 16-year-old girls we know, they've got their driver's license. They got 2 extra tickets for the Stones. The tickets were $4.50,
Right.
50 cents. So they drove us in. We were still kids, but just getting into teens. And we had really good seats. We were sitting just a little above the stage, but with a clear shot of everything. And the thing, I tell people this all the time, the thing that really changed my life, first of all, I couldn't take my eyes off of Keith Richards. I'm like, who is this guy? Is he the devil? What's going on with the hair? Did he stick his head in the fire? But then
Yes.
all of a sudden they bring up the house lights, let's have a look at you and all that stuff. And Jagger starts looking at me, from about 30 feet away. And I had long, long blonde hair. I was a pretty youth. So he thought I was a girl. So he starts doing all the bumping and grinding at me. And then I get really nervous, don't know what to do. So I go like this. And he blows me a kiss and trots on. And I'm like, oh, shit, what just So the girls drive us back to Stanford. And my parents like, where were you all day? I'm like, I was in New York. What are you doing in New York? I said, I was seeing the Rolling Stones. Like, oh, those guys that aren't the Beatles? Yeah, but they're really good. I said, Mom and Dad, sit down. You got to hear what I have to say. We're at the kitchen. All right, my brother and sister weren't around. I said, look, I like girls, okay? But I'd never seen this guy on TV before. And all of a sudden he's doing this dancing and this wiggling. And I don't know, man, it really sort of changed my life. But I like girls. That was really my sexual awakening.
Well,
I
yes.
realized it was okay to just, be a guy that likes girls, but still wiggle your hips a little bit. So here it
Yes,
was.
well, there you go. Jagger, Bowie, they were quite they were confident, weren't they, with their sexuality.
Yeah.
So that was all good. And did any New York or American bands float your boat, or was it all sort of
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, I was still quite young. So I thought that Grand Funk was great. It's like thinking of, we're an American band and all that. Yeah. Creedence, of course, all that. But, and also funk, soul and funk. I had a lot of that stuff. But
right?
no, as far as just electric bands, it was just all British.
Yes.
I dug Savoy Brown. They were even one of the acts that opened for the Stones. I loved Traffic.
Right,
Okay,
Stevie.
yeah, and that part of our education, me and the crew, was at the theater in Port Chester, New York, at the Capitol Theater.
And what was
You
it
know,
like then, sort of being aware of things at
well,
that age, and then sort of like as the sort of decade finished, and
well,
obviously you suddenly found so many people dying, and that party coming to a rather abrupt end. Did that feel a little bit discombobulating?
no, not at all. I'm just glad that I survived it. I mean, we were already fooling around with stuff, by the time we were 15, whatever, 16. And so of course, grass, hashish. Uh, a friend of mine gave me these little orange pills and told me they were synthetic mescaline. It wasn't. It was obviously orange sunshine. And
Right.
I was 16, 17 at the time, still in high school. And like I'm in the car with my friends on a Friday night, and I look out the car window, and instead of seeing like a country road in Connecticut, I'm seeing the universe with all its stars and planets right outside the car window. And I'm like, all right, okay, I guess that's not synthetic mescaline. So no, we were really on the edge, and that's what Unhappy Jack is all about.
Right.
It's about a 17-year-old kid's misadventures sniffing heroin. It's okay. We're just sniffing it. And I don't regret having done that when I was 17. I was very unhappy at home by that time. And I was getting introduced to all this stuff. Just like I was getting introduced to all the really great music by black musician friends of mine. Marion Meadows was, we were classmates. He's got multiple CDs out. He's a great sax player, and back then he was playing alto sax. So I
Right.
would say, Marion, come on in. I'll make a few dollars. My Stones cover band. I want you to blow some sax on Brown Sugar. It was great, and we
Yes.
we had this great composition class, music class, last one of a Friday afternoon. So of course we all went stoned to the class. And
Nice.
Mr. Truglia didn't catch on, but he was a very hip dude. And one day, we had some famous musicians living in Stamford, Connecticut. One day, Mr. Truglia said, "Put your pencils down. We're not writing any harmony today. My friend Benny's going to come in and blow for you." Benny Goodman walks in, the man who invented modern jazz, pretty
Well,
much.
quite. Benny
I know.
Goodman. My
He
God.
got there just before Miles. Then Miles took it even further. But he
Yes.
walks in and puts his licking stick together and he starts blowing, and we're like, Jesus Christ. So it was with me. It was always music, music, music. That's it.
And
You
were you
know?
tempted to sort of wander over to Woodstock at this stage? Was that kind
No,
of
no, I wasn't even tempted. It looked like it looked horrible. No, no, and plus I was still quite young.
Yes. Well, I just
But
wondered if someone would have said, "Oh, do you want to have a casual camping trip this weekend
well,
with a
Roger
few?"
Daltrey, Roger Daltrey did marry a girl not too many streets away from mine, up in the woods in Connecticut, Heather. And her brother came home one day from school and said, "You won't believe what just happened." I'm like, "What?" That fringe thing that Daltrey wore at. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Well, he was wearing it fixing her Volkswagen in my parents' driveway. It's like,
Right.
so I never met him, but I did hang out with his brother-in-law or whatever. So it's a very weird place. Columbia Records had a house that they would house groups in. So one week it might be Johnny Winters. I met him. One week it might be the Chambers Brothers. And I'll just tell you one more thing, because I'm really kind of talking a lot. Like, for instance, my best friend at the time and I were both 16, 17, and we were really into Johnny Winter. We heard he was living in town. So we're
Right.
shopping at this funky Army Navy store with all this old denim and stuff. And all of a sudden, this guy walks in with two chicks, right? And I didn't look at him. I didn't even see him. All of a sudden, one of them goes, "Hey, Johnny, take a look at this jacket." And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh, it's Johnny fucking Winter. So there you are.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you.
And then obviously you were talking about British rock bands. I mean, Led Zeppelin was coming along at this stage. Were
Yeah.
they, and you'd had Cream before
Yes.
them. So were
Yeah.
they kind of quite, did they take the baton and sort of take it to another level for
They were
you?
quite something. I never saw them though. I was still a kid, so I was into Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I just like the bombast. So I
Right.
saw I saw Emerson, Lake and Palmer a couple of times, and it was funny because centuries later, when I hooked up with Ian McDonald, he's like, "Oh yeah, Greg Lake. He's coming over for coffee." And I'm like, "Okay, fine."
Nice.
So, but the thing that really changed me was getting together with Ian McDonald. This is the guy that started King Crimson with Fripp back in '69.
Yes.
They opened for the Stones, at Hyde Park, and then he quit the band for some reason. And then in the late '70s, got together with Mick Jones and started Foreigner, and did pretty well with that. But then he kind of quit that band too. Anyway, Lynnea and I at the time were living on West End Avenue here in New York City. Now we're further up Manhattan. And she said, "There's this English guy living across the street. He's coming to all my Shakespeare productions, and he wants to meet you." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, he's a musician." I'm like, "What's his name?" Ian McDonald. I'm like, "Okay." So the next night, I'm coming home from a gig with Lynnea, with my guitar on my back, and it was my country rock band at the time. And there he is, and he shakes my hand, and we start talking, and Linnea's like, "I'll let you guys take it," because all I wanted to know was, how did you stack saxophones on Bang a Gong?
Right.
He's like, "Well, I'm with Bolin, and I told him I'm just going to put the soprano down here. No, I'm going to put the alto down here and put the baritone up top. That famous
Yes.
thing. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. So that was it. And he said, "Why don't you come over tomorrow and bring a guitar?" Okay, fine. So I brought my guitar. We plugged in his living room, and immediately we meshed. Immediately, we sounded like one guy playing two guitars. And he's like, Jesus, I've been doing this for 40 years or something. It's like, this is it, the first stroke. And so we had a really good two guitar thing right from the start. And that just started, I introduced him to all the clubs downtown that he hadn't been to. We played a bunch of them. Took him to everybody's favorite music store, Matt Brewster's 27th Street Guitars. Like, what are you doing with Ian McDonald? I'm making a record. And so, we spent the better part of a year working on tunes. And then we went into the studio. We're going back to 17, I think it was 2017, and nailed it. And then a year later, we're doing a little tour because we put out vinyl. We played Levon Helm's Barn, We were a good little band.
Yeah,
and then Ian got sick, about 2.5 years ago, and that was it.
Christ.
But he was a lovely person. When I first invited him into my band, which consisted of Denny, who's still my drummer, and this other guy on bass. Yes. As soon as he said, "I want to join your band," I'm like, okay, maybe I should ask the guys. So, he joined the band. He liked the name I gave it, Honey West, and that's the name still sticks to this day. I have it now. And we just started playing a million gigs. And then we made this record.
God,
and then
that's quite amazing,
turned it
isn't
to
it?
vinyl. Yeah. But he knew everybody. It's like when we were ready to go to vinyl, a year after we released the CD, Greg Calby, who's that great cutter and mixer guy at what's the name of that giant conglomerate that did everybody from John Lennon to you name it. Greg Calby, great editor or whatever. And we sat there for a couple of days having him throw up different hook-ins and everything and saying, "What do you think of this? Do you want this? Do you want this?" And after about 2 days, we had it. And then we took it to the cutter, put it out. We had management at the time. But the thing is, when Ian first joined the band, I realized, like, wait a minute, I'm rushing the tempo. It's
Right.
It's like when I was a kid, I stupidly read this article in Stones saying that Keith sets the tempo and Charlie follows along. So with my 3-guy band, I was setting the tempo and they were going nuts. Ian comes in and I'm like, okay. So with my own money, I scheduled a rehearsal. It was the night before Thanksgiving of that year, whenever it was, 2017, I think. And it was myself and Ian and Denny on drums. And I just sort of locked in because I was always rushing, But I called a friend of mine in Nashville and I said, I don't know, man, I got Ian McDonald in our band now, and I don't know if I'm good enough to be in my own band. Seriously, I don't know if I'm good enough.
Right.
And it was at that same time that, I've always, massively loved country music, So I was going down to Nashville about 3 times a year for about 3 or 4 years.
Yes.
Just doing demos, recordings, just learning everything I could. Took meetings, all that other stuff. And what am I saying? I've been a busy guy.
Yes, but this chapter with Ian was amazing. But how did you, just going back just slightly, so did you finish college at that stage back in, when you left at 16? So you finished that?
Yeah, I finished college in the late 70s and moved to New York. And
did you go through a punk period? Because you would have probably, if you were into and go to CBGB's and Max's Kansas City.
No, my wife Lynnea, who's right here, she went to CBGB. She was going to school at Columbia University, so she did the whole CB thing.
So did
Barnard College?
Did punk sort of interest you, or were you a little bit?
Well, when I hooked up with Bobby Lawler, this great musician, I met him through his girlfriend, who was also a member of the Actors Studio, and I said, I've been out of music too long. I'm going to take a break. And so Bobby tried me out as a drummer, and he'd had a band called Panic Squad, which was very downtown. They were part of the whole punk scene. And so I became his drummer. We started writing together. And so it was sort of like the last of the power trios with some punk thrown in.
Right. So at this stage, you were a drummer in the band?
Yes, I was. Just
right.
Floor toms, a lot of floor toms.
What?
We played one club, and Tommy Ramone, not the producer, but the Ramone, he came up to Bobby and said, "I really like your drummer. I want to use him on something." Bobby said, "He's my drummer." I found, I didn't find out till 6 months later. Like, Bobby, well, I could have just, done a couple of tracks and made a little money. No, you're my drummer. So it was
Right.
all part of that scene. And I
Did
guess
you did you follow David Bowie's career at all? Were you
yeah,
interested in?
never saw him, but I think I bought every album. I got a story about that. It's like when I was still in college and Bowie was really coming up, Ziggy and all that was happening a little bit later. Um, I, it was a really cool dorm. It was like hippie kids, nutty kids like me, and jocks. And we all got along. We all had to get good grades. But one Friday night, nobody had anything to do. And I called all the jocks down. You know what a jock is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, football guy. I called them all down. I said, "You got to see this guy that's coming on Don Kirshner's rock concert right now." And so we sit down. Bowie comes out wearing fishnets, a Merry Widow corset, boots and his hair. And they're like, "Ted," I'm like, "What? Why is he wearing fishnet stockings?" I'm like, "I don't know, but just they're going to play a song. Listen." And all of a sudden, Gene Genie comes on. Those guys all went out and bought the album the next day. I'm getting chills.
Right.
It was so cool to turn these jobs. Why
Yes.
why is he wearing fishnets? It's okay, it's all right, man. So
So
there it was.
so you're playing drums in various bands, doing the
Cover
odd
bands for a while, yeah.
most cover bands. So then how do you what does your 80s consist of? Do you then sort of does music still play a part or do you get into theatre more at this stage?
Yes, I auditioned for the Actors Studio. Lee Strasberg made me a lifetime member in 1980.
Right.
That's also when I met Lynnea. Life started to change, and Lee died a couple of years later, and I kind of got a little lonely, going there with an empty chair, and so that's when I got back into drumming and stuff. And
Yes.
then Al Pacino's office started calling me a lot, saying, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm playing drums." Like, "No, Al's thinking of doing some more Shakespeare. Why don't you come to Al's office now? We're going to read Titus Andronicus or Richard III." So for a year, I was going up to Al Pacino's office to just table read plays because he was always saying, "We're going to do this." And I got a call from his manager one day, and he said, "Do you know who Julie Taymor is?" I'm like, "No." She hadn't yet done The Lion King. He's like, "Well, you're going to know who she is. Come to her loft tomorrow. Bring a script, Titus Andronicus. Al's going to be reading the Doomed Warrior, and he's going to
Right.
have some other people there." So I showed up. I met Julie Taymor, and she had just signed to do a movie called Titus, and she wanted Americans in the cast, not all Brits, but yet she brought a ton of Brits to the reading. But anyway, um, Al greets me at the door. He says, "Come here, I want you to meet Kevin Spacey." This is before anyone knew Kevin Spacey was a monster,
Right.
including Al. So, like, he's like, "Come on, I want you to meet Teddy Zurkowski, a terrific actor." I put my hand out. Spacey's sitting in this easy chair, and he goes like this. Like, am I supposed to kiss the ring? I'm
Right.
like, what's up with this guy? I don't know. So we do the reading. Al blows the roof off the dump with his big revenge speech at the end. And as we're parting company, he's like, "Teddy, we're going to do this one. We're going to do." Okay, fine. We're going to do this one. I get a call 2 weeks later. Al needs money. He's having a lot of babies. Al needs money. He's going to do this Mayor Giuliani thing. He's going to do a thing called Mr. Mayor for
Right.
so many millions. So Julie Taymor went off and she cast in England with some really good actors. Tony Hopkins played Titus. There's only one American in the cast, was Jessica Lange. So that went. The day I
Right.
got the call to come in and meet her, right? Going back a little bit.
What
This,
Jessica?
yeah, Jessica Lange, yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the only reason why I got into that room, I was going to go see the Stones press conference. They were coming in the Hudson River on a boat, and they were
Right.
going to announce yet another tour. And Linnea's like, "Go see Al. Keith Richards is not going to give you a job in the theater. And so I'm like, "I really want to go to the press conference. I got a pass." And like, "No, no, no." So I went to see Al and we did the thing. And 2 weeks later, he's like doing something else. Lynnea said, Teddy, look, let's start a Shakespeare company. You're a terrific actor. And she's a great actress and director now. She said the only time you're doing Shakespeare is when you get a call from Al or his office to go read something. Come on, let's start a Shakespeare company. So at the time I was employed, actually. I was doing a play called Night Seasons for Horton Foote, great writer. He's Oscars and everything, great man. And so I called her from backstage at the Signature Theater. And I said, yeah, man, I read King John again. It's like nobody ever does it.
Yes.
And, I know who's going to direct it. She's like, who, you? I'm backstage waiting to go on. I said, no, you're going to direct it. Oh, my God. She directed it. She came up aces. It was just amazing. And
who was the director for that, by the way?
Yeah, yeah. So we did King John. He's the bad guy in Sherwood Forest, that
Yes.
story. And so we started the company, Frog and Peach Theater Company. We used some friends from the Actors Studio, mixed in other people, and we decided to start giving it away. Let's not charge. So we didn't charge at all. We found this old church, and they said, if you could clean up the balcony, there's a theater up there that Joseph Papp built for the public theater. It's like we cleaned up the theater. There's like this little stage that this famous Joseph Papp had built.
Yes.
And we just got right to work. So the company's been around for over 30 years now.
So what interests you so much about Shakespeare out of all the different, writers or different theater, direction?
That's easy. When I was a little Catholic school kid, which I'm not anymore, my mother got sick one Sunday. So my father said, get in the car. We're going to church. Okay, we're going to church. On the way home, we would always stop at this newspaper shop. And he would buy the New York Daily News Sunday section with the TV guide on top. I looked down at the TV guide. It's in full color, big page. And there's this really cool looking guy wearing like a bearskin vest and a crown. It's Mackers. It's Macbeth.
Yeah.
And next to him is this beautiful woman. And I said, well, that's it. So since that time, I'm married to a beautiful woman, and I've worn a lot of crowns.
Right, blimey. So you set this up in 94 with...
Yeah, I think it was, around that time. Yeah, about 30 years ago, yeah.
And this was with your fellow student member?
Some people from the studio, and then we started working with some famous people from some time. Austin Pendleton, great man of the theater. He wanted to play something. Right now, she's working on casting Titus Andronicus, which will open in February, March, and she's going after Jeffrey DeMunn, who has quite a fan following from the Walking Dead and all that.
Yes,
we've worked with a lot of really good actors, some of whom have been in big TV shows, which is good.
So from the sort of early 90s, Frog and Peach Theatre Company was that your
our main thing? Our main thing. I wasn't doing anything else, not even a day job, and I didn't want to act for a while. And so, Lynnea just put me to work. I'd go in there and start nailing up sets and stuff. Then it was time to play Richard III. So thanks to Lynnea and thanks to our company, I got to play Richard III several times, even won an award. I played Hamlet several times, and the list just goes on and on and on. And now, when I went back into music with Ian and a little before, we're jumping into the early 2000s now. I started writing like crazy, and I realized that all that Shakespeare that I had done, thanks to Lynnea casting me, had allowed me to open up a whole poetry thing in my head. All of a sudden, I'm writing all the lyrics for everything that Ian and I are doing. It's like I would bring him the lyrics, I would bring him the basic melody and sort of a general guitar arrangement. He would take it and just make it all beautiful. He'd write a gorgeous middle eight and everything. So, Jesus, I didn't know I've done so much.
Yes. So how many productions were you putting on a year at this particular place?
I'm glad you asked that. When we first started Frog and Peach, 30 whatever years ago, Lynnea and I were producing, six? Was it 6 or 3? We were doing 3 Shakespeare productions full
Right.
cast every season, starting in September and coming down in June. And it's a bitch, you know.
Three. Yeah, and who were you? Were these kind of professional?
All the actors were, yeah.
Right. And what sort
They're
of
all
audiences were you getting? How many people did this theatre fill?
really grateful ones. It only sat about 66 people, which is pretty good, you know, because at the time we couldn't afford a major equity contract. You know, we were able to afford, you know, something a little downscale. So that all worked out. Lynnea, for the past several seasons, has been now in gigantic off-Broadway houses. I mean, you know, she's sufficient now. She works like crazy, raising money. She's a great grant writer, and
Right. She's
and
that
so for
skill.
several years now, yeah, I got out of the company after 6 years. I was exhausted, and I went back into music. Plus, I got an offer from the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute to come and teach a few classes.
Right.
So I'm still doing that. I'm still going in a couple of days a week and teaching everything from theater history to Shakespeare to method acting.
How long
Uh,
were you at college studying acting?
uh, well, in high school, I auditioned for the junior year, you know, second to last, whatever you call it over there, the junior year, and I didn't get in. And my best friend at the time got the lead.
Right.
So senior year, I guess we all cleaned up a bit. And I auditioned and I got a small but good singing role in Three Penny Opera. Three Penny Opera, as you know, by Kurt Weill and
Yes.
Bertolt Brecht, is all about the coming of the Nazis. It was first produced in the early 30s, just after Husitz came to power. And then Kurt Weill and Bertolt Brecht and Lotte Lenya, the great singer, they had to go to LA and never come back to Germany. You know, they did eventually.
Yes.
But so anyway, to make a long story short, we had to sing for Three Penny Opera to play one of Macheath's gang, you know, Mac the
Yes.
Knife. And so I didn't bring sheet music. I didn't bring a piano man. I just got up on stage in the auditorium one afternoon and I started to stomp my foot like, you got to move. You got to move. You got to move. And all the black kids sitting in the theater like, yeah. I'm like, hey, I'm reaching like the coolest kids on earth here, you know, just by singing this, you know, you got to move song.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah,
It's amazing. So that must have been a hell of a commitment at that time. And also was it a big thing to decide you were going to part company with the company with this kind of Frog and
yeah,
Peach?
I was exhausted, and Linnea was doing great, and you know, it's funny because the last production I was in back then was Richard II. Austin Pendleton, great actor, famous. He was playing King Richard. I was playing Bolingbroke, who kicks him off the throne. Right, I'm the usurper. And you know, when it was Hamlet, I was getting great reviews. When it's Richard II, he's getting all the great reviews. So I was a little tired. So so what? You know, I said I'm going elsewhere. You know, it's funny because as soon as I got ready to move on, we still had another week to go. The phone started ringing like crazy. The thing about New York is it's a music town as well as a theater town. Everybody
Yeah.
kind of forgets that. So I got a call from an indie film producer and said, you know, my wife took a Shakespeare seminar with you last year. I want to hire you. We're going to co-write a script called Two Gentlemen from Tijuana. And so we wrote that over the course of a summer. I wrote it in iambic pentameter, but in modern English, with Felix, you know, adding in things.
Yes.
And then he started shopping it around, and we got some letters of interest from some famous actors. And then he said, "Oh, the hell with it! I'm going to go down to Telemundo in Mexico City and take a meeting." It's like, great, you know, if you could get the Telemundo people to make this, because we can't seem to get, you know, Hollywood to make it. Felix calls me from Mexico City a couple of days later. I'm like, what's going on? Well, the guy that runs Telemundo is very rich and he really likes the script, but he wants us to put a talking donkey in. I'm like, oh,
Right.
Felix, God, Jesus Christ. And, you know, Felix is Hispanic. He's from the Dominican Republic. I said, God, that's so fucking stereotypical. A talking donkey. Are you kidding me? He's like, I'm going to tell him to forget it. Good. So I think
Yes.
but I started doing that. I got a call from the Strasberg Institute saying, please come to work. I said, I got another week in the show. Finish the show. Come on down. And then
And
I got a,
what was the Lee Strasberg company like to work with? I mean, it has a very
well,
massive.
it's a conservatory. And we get a lot of people from England and from the EU and from Russia and other places. So, we're working with actors that applied, passed the application. Lee never asked potential students. See, I never had to pay at the Actors Studio. It was all free. But
Right.
these young people, of course, are paying. And what? People often ask Lee Strasberg when he was alive, um, why don't you audition people? He's like, because anybody that wants to study the method can study the method. We have a lot of doctors, dentists, lawyers that were here studying the method. It's great for lawyers because it's how most legal arguments are constructed, you
Yes.
know? So,
Did you study acting, directing, production a lot?
I took some acting classes in high school. When I got to college, I was doing a double major, English literature and acting. And I made sure that I made it to the top. And by senior year, I was like the lead actor in everything. I thought I was God. And then, I went up to my advisor. It was May of senior year, and I said, Bob, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to New York, and I'm going to audition for the studio, and I'm going to, audition for everything. What do you think? He's my advisor. He says, I can't advise you on that.
Right.
Nobody can advise you on it. And now, years later, when I'm teaching Chekhov all the time, Nina in Seagull, who wants to be an actor, says Trigorin, who's sort of grooming her as his next conquest, I'm going to be an actress. What do you think? The guy in Chekhov says, can't tell you. It's too much of a responsibility. I can't tell you to go and do it. So I went and did it. And it worked out great.
Blimey.
Yeah, I
Yes.
know. I know.
That is quite the world, isn't it, really? Yes. But then, I mean, did music play much of a part for you during
Yes,
those?
because Lynnea started hiring me to write music for all of her productions.
Right.
Shakespeare puts a lot of lyrics and tunes, and we lost a lot of the music when the Globe burned down. Okay. So I've written music for Twelfth Night. A lot of these famous songs needed a little perking up. So I scored As You Like It. I scored just other productions. So many I can't even remember. You know.
Yes.
So
Did that remake of Romeo and Juliet, which is now quite a few decades, did that sort of change Shakespeare in a lot of ways?
it did for my students. I liked the black actor that was playing Mercutio. I thought he was terrific. And, he was rolling on, Molly and firing guns off all over the place. But Baz Luhrmann has always been a little too much for me. I always refer my students back to 1967, Franco Zeffirelli's
Oh
Romeo and
yes,
Juliet.
I remember
Absolutely.
seeing.
I know. With the most beautiful girl in the world at the time, Olivia Hussey and Leonard Whiting and John McHenry played Mercutio. He broke my heart. So, and I tell my students it wasn't very diverse back then, but it's a damn good show. You should see it. So
Yes,
I do my best.
it was.
I've taught NYU for about 6 or 7 years at Strasberg. Geez, you're making me feel amazing.
Yes, well,
So,
God, it's. I'm trying to keep the timeline in my brain in a way. So,
oh God.
so did you have a lot of kind of tricky conversations, to sort of say, look, I'm going to have a bit of a career change here. I'm going to say
Well,
goodbye to Frog and Peach is no longer going to be. I'm not part
At
of
that
that
time,
journey.
Linnea was glad to see me go. I was tired and I was bitching all the time. So,
Oh, were
you
you?
know, but this,
And what music were you listening to at that stage? What did
you
you used to
know,
go home and listen to or think, God, this is
that's
really good?
really embarrassing because after drumming for Right Little Boy downtown and not getting the record deal, I pulled that away, put my drums in somewhere and just got back totally to acting. Um, so I missed a lot of the 80s. I mean, of course, I like the Smiths,
Oh my
and
God,
but
they were my band in the 80s.
I know the 90s come in, and I'm working fairly consistently as an actor. I was doing working with Horton Foote and the Signature Theater Company, and writing music for Linnea's productions. And in the early 90s, Britpop comes in.
Right.
Well, I was Blur. I'm sorry. I dug Oasis, but I was Blur.
Nice.
And I also liked Jarvis Cocker.
Pulp. Yes.
Yeah, Pulp. All of that. I just thought
So
was fabulous.
you kept your love of British rock, pop.
Absolutely. And I felt so sad because I really wasn't getting back into music. That didn't happen until around 2000,
And then
2001.
being in New York, did you go to many live shows or had you?
No, Richard Lloyd from television, remember that great actor?
Yes.
He lived upstairs when we first moved into this building in Manhattan. Somebody said, "Oh, you got a famous guy." It's Richard Lloyd. So Richard Lloyd told me he never goes to any shows unless he has a backstage pass.
Right.
My ego sort of works the same way. Um, but Richard Lloyd, Linnea and I, whatever we're doing, we're not geniuses, but we've always attracted geniuses.
Right.
It's like, Richard Lloyd is still an amazing guitar player. He's been through all kinds of stuff, and so he knocked on my door one Saturday morning because he heard me playing. He's in his pajamas. He's got an insane reputation. Everyone's like, "Don't get mixed up with that guy." He's got a Stratocaster hanging off his back. Sure, come on in. We sit on the edge of my bed. Linnea was up, thankfully, and we just started doing the two guitar thing again. Ian McDonald came over. I introduced the two of them, two musical geniuses. It's just,
It's
I don't
amazing.
know. Well, it's amazing that you're letting me talk about all this because no one's ever really
Well, no,
asked.
because well, that's actually interesting because I managed to get an interview with Richard once, and yes,
What happened? What
well,
happened?
no, it was all good. We
Oh,
must
okay.
about 5 years. I mean, 5 years ago, and
Yeah,
he was still with it, and generally, it was. I was just pleased to manage to sort of get that one in the bag, so to speak. There was a few others that I've unfortunately missed, and the person's passed away. From that because anybody from
yeah,
that punk period, were generally into quite hard drugs, weren't they, and hard
yeah,
living. It
yeah.
wasn't, all the Johnny Thunders, New York
Yeah.
Dolls,
Richard
so,
told me he did the heroin thing for quite a while. Yeah.
and that was a bit of a, yeah.
Mm.
So there was a lot of casualties during that period. But I do
Yeah.
know, I mean, in the 90s, that decade that you mentioned, Blur and Pulp and
Mm.
Britpop. I mean, America was getting very hard rock. They were getting into Soundgarden, Soul Asylum. You had Guns N' Roses. Did any of those come onto your
Uh,
radar?
yeah, I dug Guns N' Roses a bit. I mean, it was good music, but maybe not for every day. Also, a couple of my wife's from Seattle, so I dug a lot of the Seattle stuff. I mean, Kurt Cobain and whatever else. No, it was great.
And were you managing to navigate all the, not temptations, but all the lifestyle that goes with late night
Oh,
theatre and bits and
yes,
pieces?
no, absolutely. I mean, I did enough stupid stuff in high school, for God's sakes, and didn't do any of that stupid stuff after that. But there was always drinking, there was grass, there was whatever. But no, no, I mean, I just stopped. It's like I still smoke a little weed now and then, but I haven't had a drink in 30 something years. I don't know. I've got tremendous willpower.
Well, that's
I'm uh,
good.
I'm Irish, Polish, and Russian, so I don't think I should go near the stuff. You know what I mean? It's like,
So when you wrote the album, you sort of from 2017, you finished with Frog and Peach, and then you started writing the album for Honey West,
yeah,
Old Bad World. So
yeah.
were these songs that were all written in that period between 2017, 2019?
Well, yes, absolutely. The whole album. Yeah, and I uh, we just not only did we click as one guitar, Ian and myself, but also we clicked at writing too. I was definitely the lyricist, and I would also map out certain guitar parts and arrangements, and then I bring it to Ian. He would wave a magic wand, like, well, okay, great. Yeah, a lot of writing, a lot of writing.
Yes. So
And the
when
thing
you
is,
went, so
yeah,
when you
go
went
ahead.
in the studio, had you got everything rehearsed, demoed?
Absolute. Oh God, yes. Oh, we're not the Stones. We don't, we don't book into a studio for 3 weeks and try to write something. No, no, no. Ian and I were really, really on the money all the time. We rehearsed. We used to rehearse for the rehearsals. I go over to Ian's and we do a little rehearsal with 2 guys. Then we
Yeah.
go do the real rehearsal with 4 guys. And yeah, it's like, I was like that even before I met him. And he's like, "Are we going to rehearse for the rehearsal again?" "Yeah, man, I'll be over tomorrow." So that's
He was
okay.
he was thorough. What was his memory of being in Foreigner? Did he mention that to
Ian
you?
Ian had a interesting background. Around 66, 67, um, he was just sort of getting into music, maybe a little bit earlier. And he told me, this is from Ian, he told me that his father just didn't know what to do with him. So without telling Ian, this is a real British father, he signed him into the army
Right.
as a bandsman. So here's Ian, who's not yet 17 or whatever, and he finds himself in Guyana, which was British New Guinea back then.
Yes.
And he goes into this Quonset hut, and it's filled with every musical instrument imaginable, orchestral and everything. He was a genius. He went in there, he taught himself everything. But
Amazing.
now he's stuck in South America, and everything's happening in London. you know. So he somehow was able to get signed out, got to London before he got shanghaied into the army. It was 63, 64, 63. He saw the Stones at the Railway Hotel, when Ian was just a kid and they were
Right.
just kids. And he said, this Jagger's area on stage was the size of a postage stamp. And he did not stop moving within that parameter for an hour and a half. Right then it was, quite a show. But he couldn't get out of, the army in 66, 67. So finally he does. And what is it? He hooks up with Julie Dybel and some people from Fairport Convention. He started doing
Right.
that whole thing. And then January of 69, he and Fripp get together and they start King Crimson. And they release In the Court of the Crimson King, which is almost entirely written by Ian and playing everything, Mellotron and
Yes.
everything. And it was released in June or July of that year. And they immediately got a call from the Stones people saying, "You're going to open for the Stones in Hyde Park, the Brian Jones Memorial." So
Yes.
they did that. And then they embark on a tour, he told me. And they start in New York and then Boston, Chicago. All the while, they're hauling a Mellotron. And, you can't keep those things in tune. And Ian was very persnickety. So before they even left the East Coast, he was ready to kill somebody. They get out to LA. They do the whole West Coast scene, with Bill Graham booking him into the Fillmore West.
Right.
And then he says, "I miss my girlfriend, Charlotte. I'm leaving the band." What?
Oh.
The record just went to number one. It was number one for a bit of time.
Yes.
And so he pissed everybody off, he told me, went back to London, waited tables for a while. But now then it got to be about 72. And what's his name? Tony Visconti,
Tony,
Boland's.
yes, Mr. Bowie Boland. Yes,
He
and
gets a
Bowie
call from
Boland.
Visconti's people saying, "Come in, we're making this album called Electric Warrior. We need some sax." And so he comes in, gets to know Boland. There's Tony Visconti. And he, I think in one take, he stacks two saxophones. And then, Ian enjoyed that part. But then, Ian's always had this kind of negative side. I said, well, what happened after that? Didn't you play on anything else? He's like, well, we went on Top of the Pops. I'm like, okay, I've seen that. It's on, it's on video and stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
He said, but also, they put me on the microphone to do hand claps with Boland on some number. I don't know, Metal Guru, Is It
Right.
True? Something. So he stops and says, "Mark, do you think it'd be good if maybe we tried this?" And Bolan goes, "Oh, so we're choreographing hand claps now, are we?" and that's it. That was like a pie in the face to Ian. He just couldn't wait to finish.
Right.
But he's also on Jeepster. That's his baritone sax. He could really blow sax. So,
Yes.
when one listens to the Honey West album, Bad Old World, he really unleashes the saxophones on Dementia. I wrote that song. He fixed the middle eight, so but I was thinking about my parents because they were coming down with it, and listen to Dementia when you get a moment, because my God, he sounds like the Glenn Miller Orchestra. It's just incredible.
Jeez, crazy.
He was amazing. He just
Yes.
was. And
So what was his, how did he manage to go from that, to being so British, to Foreigner, who are so American?
well, the whole thing with he and Mick Jones is that, okay, we're going to have 3 Brits in the band and 3 Americans. Let's call it Foreigner. That makes everybody happy. And that's all it
Right.
was. And somehow he hooked up with Mick Jones in New York City, about 77, I guess. And they started casting the band. They heard about this guy, Lou Gramm. That's kind of like
Yes.
a Robert Plant from the north, and they demo Feels Like the First Time. They bring it to one honcho at Atlantic, and he signs the whole goddamn band. And there it was. One of my very good friends says, I'll never forgive Ian. He invented corporate rock." It was that kind of thing.
Well, yes. I mean, well, I got to Foreigner because I was 16 at the time with a famous, is it? Yeah, the 419, their 4th album. So Ian had left by then, hadn't he? So
Yeah.
he worked
Well,
on
well, I
Head
hope you're not
Games.
going. I hope, however, you're going to cut this and use it, I hope you don't use this. He
Oh,
told me he was fired. They started the band in 77. They shot right to the top. By 78, they were the hardest working band. They were touring more than the Stones, for Christ's sake, but they were still opening for the Stones.
right.
They're out in Colorado. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I saw them. I hadn't seen them since '63. They all walk by with these little birdie legs." Like, well, they're little guys. And then he told me that I think it was the beginning of '80, or maybe it was '79. He and oh God, lovely man, the keyboard player, whatever.
Oh, Al Greenwood.
Al Green, yes, Al Greenwood. Thank you, Al Greenwood. Yes, who I got to know pretty well, and I forgot his name. They go to what's supposed to be a session for the next album. I guess it was the 4th album. Maybe it was Head Games or something like that.
Right.
And they go to Electric Ladyland Studios, and they go out on the floor, and nobody's there, and nothing's set up. This is Ian telling me.
Yeah.
And the guy in the booth says, call your manager, whatever, or I guess who was managing not a nice man, I think it was Kolodny. They said, "You guys are fired." Ian told me that he had just put out a lot of money because somebody was telling him that he was rich now. So he and his 19-year-old bride, who he met in Louisiana, who just had a baby, Max, who's a great musician. He was our bass player for quite a while. He and Al went from Electric Ladyland up to 57th Street to Carney's Bar, an Irish pub, and they get shit-faced. And then it's time to go home, Ian told me. And he goes up to the Dakota. And earlier that year, he'd heard the shots. He's like, "Great, first I hear the shots outside, and now I'm out of the biggest band in the world at the time." He said he went into the kitchen, and there's his wife with their newborn, and says, "We got to move." He's just like every great musician I've ever worked. Steve Holley from Wings, right? He was our drummer for a while, and a lot of other bands. Everybody has some story or other. Holly's got nothing to say about McCartney. He thought it was great. They were going into Tokyo, that famous thing, and they go into the customs, and he's standing right next to Paul, and Steve is, and Paul's standing right next to Linda, and the Japanese custom official opens a bag that McCartney was carrying.
Yes.
It's filled with grass. And he goes, "That's not hers, that's mine." It was hers, but he did the gentlemanly thing. He said, "That's mine." You got to admire the guy for that. And he did
Well,
9 days in jail. But Steve, I met him through Ian, of course. We were doing some track that somebody, and the next thing I know, he's in the band. Denny was doing a lot of country stuff with some of Dylan's people,
Right.
up north. And so, all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'll get Denny back someday. And I did. But fucking Steve Holley, great.
Oh,
And
God.
he had so many stories to tell, Now I'm giving you a lot of super private stuff. So where does all this go?
Well, I bet. Yeah, I know. I'll check with you before I put it out. But no, but it's actually because most of it is on the web, on various websites. So you haven't broken anything that's like, oh my God, no one's ever mentioned that before. So I
Right.
think we're all okay. I don't think there's anything
Yeah.
that is new territory. But it's I suppose it's just the life of being an artist and being in bands and that dynamic. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's you can't expect it to be a lovely lovely
No.
narrative. It just happens, and obviously, but yeah. So yeah,
Every
God,
great musician I've ever played with has gotten fucked over royally at least 10
yes,
times.
absolutely. I think that's basically we can agree.
Yeah.
Everyone, it's going to end. Unfortunately, it's going to end in tears. But you kind of don't jump before that because you still think it could still be great. But because a lot of people I spoke to just felt like I wish I'd walked away a little bit earlier. I just wished I just.
Well,
Tricky, isn't it? It's tricky because you never know. Because I don't know. On that Foreigner thing, it was strange that the next album they release has the big single, and suddenly they're part of the '80s with REO's
yeah,
Speedwagon and Journey. Those three bands are like, poof,
I know.
Reagan's America is with
Well,
us.
well, thanks to Ian, I've turned into a pretty damn good rhythm guitar player, and so
Yes.
with my three-piece now, whether it's the rock musical or the country musical, I'm playing what they call rhythm lead. I'm just doing all the
So you moved
guitar.
over from your drums, so you were sort of always
Yes,
practicing playing.
yeah, I hadn't touched the guitar in a long, long time. Not that I could ever really play one. And but in around 2001, when I started to change my whole life with the writing the movie script, be right with you, Maybell, my dog, writing the movie script and teaching and everything else. What was I going to say? I forget.
Well, moving over, I mentioned about
So
yes.
I picked up a guitar for the first time in a long, long time, and I could never really play. And I said, "God damn it, I'm going to play this. I'm gonna teach and I did. And it took time, experience, and everything, but I'm a pretty damn good rhythm guitar player now. I really am.
Yes.
You
God, that's
know.
fantastic. So Ian's passing, I mean, obviously you had a little bit of warning, though it's still a horrendous shock when
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
person's not there.
Right.
Where were you sort of moving on to next in your musical and creative journey?
Well, Ian and I had sort of come upon some disagreement just before. Just months later, I heard that he had come down with something. Oh God, Ian, he was so private. Um, it's like he didn't tell me. And after we decided to just, part company for a while, and see when we get it back together, that was in January of whatever, 18, I think, or something like that, maybe
Right.
later. Um, I started texting him over the course of the next 4 or 5 months. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, come on, let's go for a walk. Let's do this. And I can't do it. Because it was COVID. I'm like, okay, it must be COVID. The following year, whatever year it was, I go into our favorite music store, and the owner says, "Hey, Ian was in here the other day. He looks really great." I'm like, "Well, he always looks great." No, he's really happy because his hair is coming back. I'm like, "What?"
Right.
He didn't tell anybody. And
Yeah.
so I texted Ian. That was like September of that year. I texted Ian and I said, I understand that you haven't been feeling your best. And he sort of sent back an angry text saying, "Who told you that?" I'm like, "Well, I can't tell you because,
Yes.
um, and there it was. And a few months later, I guess it was February of the following year, or whatever, that's like 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh, Linnea's going online first thing in the morning. She's like, "Oh my God, Ian's dead." I'm like, stop, you know. But I think about him all the time. And Tim
Yes.
Hatfield, who's my producer, my cohort, the engineer for all the stuff I'm doing now and producing it, he really misses Ian too. It's like, if we're putting down a track, we'll be like, damn, I don't play keys, Can we get Ian in here? Or
Yes.
we could use some flute here or sax or whatever. So on the Bad Old World album, he really just unfurls his banner. I mean, he's playing everything. And the very first number, Bad Old World, we were out in Williamsburg, where all the recording studios are always happening. And we go out on this, we're at Mission Sound, and we go out on this huge floor. It's got everything there. And Ian's like, we need something. We need something. I'm like, there's an electric harpsichord. That's it. He touches the thing. It just goes
It
on fire,
happened. It's kind of, yes, it must be that album must be quite strange for you. It must be a bit of a bittersweet experience.
I've started listening to it again.
Yeah. It
And
must be
even
filled with so much emotion.
yeah, But the thing is, you know, Lynnea was only 15 when she lost her mother, and we've been in love forever. And
Yes.
it's always like, move on, just move on. You have to move on. You
Yeah.
have to move on.
So
Uh,
what's your project at the moment then? What's your sort of new
okay.
what's happening in your life?
Next week, I'm seeing my band, Paul Page and Danny McDermott, and we're going to start running down all the songs for the country thing again, because we'll be casting for singers in the next couple of months. The show doesn't open until May 26th, but you got to get things lined up. So we took part of the summer off from going in and rehearsing, but we're going to get in, next week and the week after and open up that whole country bag again and start doing it. What got me doing all that was mostly Waylon Jennings. I don't know
Yes.
and so I started, doing a drop D tuning where your thumb goes like this and whoa. And also I started using a certain effect, whoa, and and so that's what the country thing is going to sound like. And there's myself, six other actors, my band plus me on guitar, and Lynnea directing, and there it is. And Tim Hatfield is going to do sound and also media, whatever.
And is this for Unhappy Jack?
No, this is for three women.
Three women. God, I wish I'd been paying it more. Three. There's a lot to look. Yes, right, but that's not on your website.
Yeah. But
No.
go check out Unhappy Jack, and
Ah, yes.
if you like it, mail me back, and I'll see if I can send you the
Yeah.
tracks
Well,
to.
it's interesting you be in music and theatre, because last month I went to the Duke of York Theatre in London to see this new play called Stereophonic,
That
which is
place
a
is that place is Duke of York's been around since what,
yeah.
1700.
So
Yeah,
basically, it's a band. It's been written
yeah,
recently, a band, basically Fleetwood Mac
yeah,
recording. And so you get to see this band recording their second album, and the stage is set. So it's the mixing desk with the person, but they're slight back to you, and the band are kind of higher up behind the
yeah.
perspex, kind of going in to record this album. And then you have the dynamic of them sort of getting themselves into all sorts of
Mm.
situations and arguments and trying to write that song. So
I've seen
I think you would like that a lot.
I've seen bits of it, but a friend of mine, it didn't run too long in New York City for some reason, and a friend of mine wanted to take me. I said, "Oh, fuck, I spend half my life in recording studios. What am I going to do?" A lot of that stuff was written by which the Arcade Fire, the Butler
Yes, that's
brothers,
the
right?
man. Yeah,
Either Win Butler or the other kid, the younger brother.
Win, I
Uh,
think.
yeah, and so he wrote all those tunes, and I dug him. I dialed up the soundtrack, listened to it, and everything. I just never saw the show.
Well, it was interesting because the writer, I believe, got a bit of a not, I don't know if it's called a lawsuit, but there was a guy who wrote a book about the Fleetwood Mac album Tusk, and
Oh,
he said, actually, you've kind of taken my book and put it into could we have a little bit of a settlement? That's what I believe, and I
yeah.
think it was settled, some settlement out of court on that. So yes, I mean it was a bit obvious it was Fleetwood Mac, but at the same time, what not to
I saw
like?
Fleetwood Mac that night opened for the Faces in Portchester, right
My
across the
God,
border.
that was the
Capitol
classic
Theater.
blues.
Well, first comes out Savoy Brown, and they had this crazy lead singer named Lonesome Dave. But I'm watching Kim Simmons, he's playing slide guitar, and they do Tell Mama, and then Fleetwood Mac comes out. They were still working with some California people. So I recognized Christine McVie. I recognized, John McVie. I recognized Mick. They had a guitar player from LA called Bob Welch.
Bob Welch, yes.
Yeah.
Bob.
It's before they walked into Sunset Sound.
Did they have Danny? Well, was Danny in the band?
Danny, no, I don't think. No, there's just one guitar was Welch.
Bob.
Yeah, I mean Danny Kerwin, whatever his name is.
Yes, that's the one. He'd probably found the Children of God by then.
I would have remembered that, yeah, I guess. But, it was so weird. So Savoy Brown, then the early incarnation of Fleetwood Mac, and then the Faces.
And was that $5?
Just about, yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ! I bet at the time you just went, "Oh, this is what life is about." Just seeing all these amazing, just like
if you had $4 or $5, you go mowing on the lawn. But best seats I had were 6th row center for traffic, and I was really into it. I'm like, oh my God. And I thought Chris Wood was so fucking cool. I want to get my hair cut like Chris Wood. I want to dress like Chris Wood, and great sax. I used to always tell Ian, the two signature sax sounds from that era are you, Ian, and Chris Wood. And he agreed.
Yes. So God, it sounds like, and Frog and Peach Theatre Company's still going strong.
Oh, absolutely. She opens Titus Andronicus in February. She's going to do that, direct that show, produce that show. And then, a month after it closes, we're on stage with 3 women. So, if you go on Facebook, just follow the Frog & Peach Company.
I will.
Peach Theater Company. I don't post a lot. I will be posting a lot, and there it is. So, okay, thank you.
Well, look, I'll let you, but thank you ever so much. And yes, I'll be looking at more for your. Yes, I've loved listening to the album you made. Frighteningly 8 years ago now, so that's a bit weird.
I guess, yeah.
Time does fly, doesn't it? But yes, it's quite a story you've got there, isn't it? It's quite.
I had no idea I had this story. It just came rolling out.
It's a good story. I tell you, it's good. But look, thank you, Ted. I'll let you rock on. But take care.
You were wonderful. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Okay.
Take care. In conversation with Ted Zurkowski, talking about his life in music and theatre and culture and much more. This has been the C86 show. David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can. Just on any of those social media platform sites. All these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, and that's it really. Anyway, have a great week. Stay safe.